Um, my name is Margot Fudge. I'm the director of Engagement Project, which is a program under the umbrella of the Child and Family Policy Institute of California, which provides capacity building to county child welfare jurisdictions around youth engagement. So much of what we just heard from the amazing speakers earlier hopefully will resonate with you all as well as we talk about how to engage our lived experience experts. So I do have a wonderful group of colleagues who are also going to be joining me today. I'm going to introduce them a little bit more later in the presentation when they do their sections, but I'm super happy to have Michelle Graff and Lindsay Alderete from Placer, Melissa Balderston from Nevada, and James Manning and Stephanie Cinchato from Santa Clara. In addition, we're really fortunate to have a number of youth with lived experience participating today, and we really look forward to their feedback in the second half of the session. So just for one housekeeping item, we are going to use the chat. Ayan's going to help me with that since I'm on my phone. But if you guys have questions or comments, especially when we have our youth speakers at the end, please definitely put those in the chat and we will make sure that we are able to respond. So you guys, you all know you're here to learn a little bit more about youth engagement and the effectiveness of using youth voice to improve policy and practice at the local level, specifically around prevention. So for, looking at that poll that we did at the beginning of the presentation today, we saw that we have a great breadth of experience across different systems. We have lived experience experts, child welfare, public health, behavioral health, so many different experts in the room. And I think many of you probably agree that having youth voice or lived experience to help guide the work is critical. But sometimes that's not always easy to implement at the local level. So we're hoping that this session today will help you conceptualize ways to infuse and lift up youth voice in your jurisdictions or organizations. So why is youth voice so important? I think the Surgeon General was the one who said earlier today that, nothing about us without us, right? And so we need to first start by remembering that youth are the experts. And let's start by defining youth engagement. This is a definition from ACT for Youth that really resonates with me. And it reads, when young people participate in meaningful opportunities and roles that allow them to build on their strengths, take responsibilities, and contribute to decisions that affect themselves and others. So there's one word in that definition that really resonates for me, and it's meaningful. And again, this is something we heard from that amazing panel that we just listened to, but meaningful participation. And so how do we make sure that we're engaging with youth, that it's not just window dressing or a checkbox, that they're really there to have a seat at the table to do this work? So someone recently said to me, not inviting people when it's time to do the work, but invite them before you even conceptualize the work. And I think that was something we also heard from the tribes today, right? Is don't invite the tribe when there's 30 days to make a policy. Like, how do we move upstream and really start to include youth and other important members well before that deadline is looming? So we also know there's been a great deal of research around why youth engagement is important. So not only can we improve outcomes of children and family that we serve by doing youth engagement, but we also improve the outcomes of the youth themselves that are participating. So as mentioned in that definition, when youth are contributing to decisions that affect them directly, youth engagement helps to build their self-esteem, increase their leadership, advocacy, and professional development skills, while increasing their overall stake in the community as a whole. So really, youth engagement is a win-win for both the youth that participate as well as the adults. But in order to achieve effective youth engagement, we really have to make a commitment to an inclusive process that's geared toward equitable outcomes and allyship. Again, mirroring what we just heard on the last panel. So in order for this work to be successful, tokenism must be avoided, meaning that youth are not just included at, like I said, as that checkbox, but as true partners whose opinions matter. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how do we get there? How do we make sure that we're actually able to implement strategies to accomplish authentic youth engagement? So I know in my own experience, sometimes this can be hard to do in your organization because it really does require a culture shift. It requires adults who are in positions of power to sometimes relinquish some of that power to allow youth to be present. And so I know many of us probably work in organizations where the adults feel like they're the experts. I know with my 25 years of child welfare experience, I feel like I know a lot, but I know I'm not the expert in the room. And that's where we really have to start to shift our culture, making sure we recognize those with that firsthand lived experience are truly the experts. So on this slide, we have some suggestions for consideration in terms of strategies for youth engagement. This is not an exhaustive list, and there's just not room to go over all the different strategies that are needed, but we wanted to touch on a few. So being consistent, this one doesn't really need a lot of explanation. I think we can all understand why youth in care who maybe lacked consistency in their life need that to do youth engagement. Really the cornerstone of the work is building a trusting relationship. And without consistency, that's really difficult. So we want to build a trusting relationship where young people feel comfortable sharing and using their voice. Being okay with being uncomfortable. Sometimes, and again, we heard this from the panel we just listened to, but sometimes the process can be a little bit messy and there's not a straight line to get from point A to point B. And that's okay. And we just need to show up and be there for the youth. Compensate fairly. I cannot state this strongly enough. Compensation is so important. You know, sometimes we ask youth to show up and participate and we don't pay them at all. There will be a room full of adults, a room full of employees who are all getting paid to sit at that table, but not the young person. So we strongly encourage you to find a way to compensate youth for their time. And it's not just the time they're sitting at the table, it's their travel time to get there. It's time that they've maybe taken to prepare, to self-reflect before or after as they engage in their own trauma history. So really making sure you're thoughtful. Do they work remotely doing this work? Do we need to compensate any technology, any software? Taking those things into consideration. And if compensation or support in that way is not possible, being upfront and transparent with the youth from the very beginning so that they understand. Being flexible. Considering flexibility in regards to meeting times, project expectations, lived experience experts who may need non-traditional work hours to do the work. They may have school, childcare, jobs, just really being flexible for them. And then I want to make sure we touch on the integration of self-care and trauma stewardship. So understanding that for young people who have lived experience to show up and talk about that can take a toll. So how do we make sure that we're supporting that they have a self-care plan, there's somebody they can talk to after their meeting, you know, kind of whatever that takes to support them. And then lastly, you know, there are other things that we want to make sure are considered, including confidentiality or informed consent, and utilizing a trauma-informed or strength-based approach. Just due to time, I'm not going to get into other strategies, but we are working on a document that we're hoping to share at the end of this presentation for folks that want to know more about different strategies. So the next slide it highlights the work that our youth engagement project has been doing with San Luis Obispo. So we work with a number of different counties across the state to do the youth engagement work. And San Luis Obispo has been one of those counties that has embraced youth engagement and lifting up youth voice really, really well. And I think this quote embodies that. So they state their youth ambassadors are full and vital partners of our county team. Engagement of our ambassadors in program and policy development has been incredibly helpful and supports achieving our intended outcomes in a more meaningful way. So they're not just looking for opportunities when they can invite young people to work with them, you know, just on a specific project here or there. They are really true members of the team that are infused and integrated into everything that they're doing. So, you know, for some counties, for some organizations, it may be a spectrum, right? You may be at the very beginning of youth engagement and just starting to think about this, or you may be like San Luis Obispo, where you really have it figured out. So we're going to turn it over now so we can hear about some of the specific practices from the various counties. And like I said, towards the end, we're going to have our lived experts on that are going to be able to answer questions. So we have Michelle Graff from the Placer County Office of Education, and Lindsay Alderete is from Whole Person Learning YES program. We're so grateful to have you with us today, and I look forward to hearing more about your work.
Yeah, thank you, Margot, for introducing us. And I apologize for the raspy voice. I've been sucking on a cough drop all morning. Some of the things that we wanted to highlight for Placer County, for example, having youth serving agencies embedded in our children's system of care. For example, myself, I work for Placer County Office of Education, and I've been here for 17 years and embedded at the children's system of care for about 15 of those 17 years. So really just working, my work site has been at the county level, integrated with probation officers, child welfare workers, public health nurses, eligibility workers, along with Lindsay Alderete, who's also going to co-host and present, who's with Whole Person Learning with the YES program, has also been embedded at Children's System of Care for several years. So we're able to serve and support youth agencies within the county. We also really wanted to highlight intentional collaboration between service providers. This is huge. Being able to collaborate with other agencies that benefit our youth, such as housing agencies, employment services that can help youth not only get jobs, but pay for behind the wheel driving lessons and other expenses that come along with that. And just being aware of what resources are available is a huge impact in helping to support our young people and gaining their trust and kind of that engagement piece. We really pride ourselves on the collaborative meetings with service providers with our youth so that they're at the table when we're doing a referral or transitioning them to an additional support and service. We in Placer County have a strong awareness of what resources are available, but also who's providing those resources, what the funding sources are for our county, and the current legislation. So by knowing this and being aware of what's coming down the pike, we're able to benefit the youth and what they can access. For example, if we're working with a young person who has a crack in their car windshield, we know of resources that can fix that so they can still get to and from school, their employer, things like that. We are also very aware of the eligibility for the different programs and service providers, as well as the waiting list. And this just benefits our young people as they build trust with us that like, oh, that person really knows what they're talking about. They're familiar with the resources. They can benefit because we're updated on the legislation that's just passed or other things that benefit our young people. And along with this is we also structure and build in carve out time to read about local resources and updates on legislation. This can be hard because it's like not direct service and can be put on the back burner, but really carving out time so we as professionals can learn more about that by reading up and being familiar with that. Another thing that we do really well here in Placer County is having creative timeframes on like not closing out referrals to young people if we aren't hearing from them or they're not responding yet. We do a great job of just seeing who else is involved in their life, who do they trust, who do they have a relationship that we can partner and come alongside with, really learning about their goals, their needs, and how do we fit in if they're being referred to our program. We also offer a variety of ways to engage in services. We know there's not a one size fits all that appeals to young people. So we offer one-on-one meetings virtually, in person. We offer small group settings and larger events, and really just meeting the youth where they feel comfortable. In addition to continuing some of the best practices that we wanted to highlight, really just adapting to what the current trends and needs of the youth are. We know typically what comes up in our KC life skills assessments is financial literacy and housing. But in addition to that, what are some current themes or trends that we're seeing or hearing from others in our community that our young people might need support with? For example, our young people have a great time and they're really good at getting jobs in our community, but not so much maintaining employment. And so we're looking at, now that you have the job, how do we maintain the job? How do we help manage conflict in the workplace? So really adapting to kind of meet the youth's needs and areas to support them. We've had the ILP, the Independent Living Program contract, for 4 years, and we have pivoted our program numerous times to meet the needs of our youth. So we're not super attached to one way that we're doing things. We're constantly reviewing, why are we doing it this way? Is it working for our young people? What could we do differently? And surveying those that are getting our services so we can better adapt to that. One thing that we put on here as a training tool is motivational interviewing. It's a practical, evidence-based approach for supporting individuals and making and sustaining positive behavioral change. My staff and I use this consistently with our young people. We even use it with our families too, but our own families, but with young people, to kind of tap into their change, their positive talk. What do they want change for in their life? Our county commits to offering this training to staff and providers multiple times throughout the year. So it's a training that we tend to really use in our toolbox. And so we highlight this with others that are working with young people. We also have a ton of youth voice in our community and offer ways to interview our young people, survey them, have them be part of work groups, and also be part of advisory meetings. Lindsay will talk in a minute about how we also use young people with lived experience and having them be part of our leadership meetings, having that interaction with our judge and other people in leadership roles or on panels. We also highlight a lot of our young people want to go into roles in youth advocacy. So we're continuing to highlight ways that they can build careers or internships within fields that support youth advocacy and stay in that role. So we just actually had an ILP workshop on this last week of highlighting different ways that they can stay in this career. And lastly, for staff commitment, we offer high quality support to our youth and really reflect on our own personal adult behavior, how it's impacting youth, how we can do better and change the way that we might be doing something by having a process partner of like, wow, I just got done with this meeting and this is how it went. What could I have done better, differently? How can I be more trauma informed? The other thing is we offer a high level of consistency remaining in our roles, and we have low staff turnover in our agency. So our youth are really able to benefit from staff who are familiar with the systems, the community, the county, the providers, and we have relationships with folks throughout our community. So we can say, hey, this young person hasn't heard from this service provider in a couple weeks. Let's make that warm handoff and that connection, or collaborate with that provider to ensure that their youth needs are being met. So those were some youth prevention strategies that we highlighted in Placer County. Here's a couple strategies that we picked to highlight in Placer County. The first one is handle with care. This is support to a child who has been exposed to some kind of trauma. So this is coming from first responders, typically from law enforcement, who's filling out a simple notification that then alerts the child's school that the child has been exposed to a traumatic event. So it could be intimate partner violence, death of a family member, witness to a crime, loss of a home. And it's not revealing any detailed information, but the main intention of notifying the school site person is so that they can focus on the child and handle with them with care the next day or that morning. So not really coming down on a child because they're late to school. They were already informed, the school was already informed that the child was maybe that law enforcement was at their home or their apartment the night before. So kind of handle that child with care. The next thing we wanted to highlight was our transition age youth housing collaborative. So we meet every other month. It's a fantastic collaboration between local housing agencies, youth serving providers, social workers and probation officers, local community college staff, employment agencies, folks at CalWorks, CalFresh, and emergency shelters. So you have all those key people. We're all working with transition age youth, and we're learning about local resources in our community, talking about housing updates, funding resources, and providing some case consultations. This is a fantastic group. We really look forward to coming together. And the more informed we are as helpers with our young people, the more access our young people have to services and resources in our community. The next resource that is the request for assistance came about during COVID. This is real and has kind of stuck because our schools saw so much value in this. It's really a process for schools to identify student needs and represents an accessible way for school districts or community-based organizations to request consultation or services for students struggling with engagement, housing, or mental health needs. So we have a team here at the County Office of Education and our Prevention Services and Supports Department that will go through those referrals, reach out to the schools or folks reaching out for students who need a higher level of support and make those connections. If we are still struggling on making those connections or providing support and resources, then we go to the CWIT team, which is the countywide intervention team, also bulleted, the fourth bullet up there. And the CWIT team is really a problem-solving team that is focused on supporting students and families who encountered system obstacles and or who have multiple complex unmet needs. So this is really for our young people and families who need a tier 3, kind of a higher level of support and service. This is a collaboration again with the County Office of Education, system of care folks, school personnel and staff, housing, mental health, social services, cultural brokers, and youth and family advocates coming together. How can we meet the needs of our youth and young people in our community? The next one I have listed is the school-based wellness centers. These are safe places on campuses throughout our county for students, families, and staff to get to support and increase success and well-being of students. This is a great preventative strategy that we have for students throughout our community, and it's also helpful to reduce stigma around mental health and increase access to mental health support that students and families may need on campus. We also listed youth programs with cultural brokers. We work closely with a few of our cultural brokers in our communities, such as the Latino community and the Native communities, to make sure our young people are getting connected to services, support, and fun enrichment activities in communities that they identify with. We also have system of care, community collaborative meetings, along with other leadership, so that we're constantly looking at what are some system updates, presentations on resources, and again, more collaboration of how can we better utilize each other's services, resources, which ultimately benefits our youth and families in our community. We also have Student Attendance Review Board, also known as SARB. This is really around truancy. And we wanted to highlight this because we have staff with lived experience that sit on our SARB panel. So if a student or family is struggling with getting their child to school on a consistent basis, we have a team really ready to wrap around this family and identify personalized strategies to encourage consistent attendance and a positive learning environment. So really kind of still including that lived experience piece. And then lastly, Lindsay is going to touch on the Youth Development Institute and a few other things that we highlight in our community.
Thanks, Michelle. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm Lindsay Alderetti, and I'm the program manager for the Youth Empowerment Support Program. And I've been working with youth and families for 14 years now. I was trying to go back in my mind. 14 is bigger than I ever thought when I first took this job. So, but we provide peer support to youth and young adults who are connected to a county service or they're at risk of involvement. And that at risk of is really important because we try to front load services in the beginning to really try and prevent that involvement or to prevent further involvement. One component of our contract in Placer is to provide a Youth Development Institute training for anyone in Placer who works with young people. Now the YDI is it's a full 4-day training. So I'm going to try and condense this a little bit. So bear with me. Excuse me. So in Placer, we valued this approach, the Youth Development Institute approach, so much that at one point, every social worker in our children's system of care was required to attend the training. That was probably about 8 years ago, and we've had lots of turnover. But my hope is that this will become a requirement again, just because it is so valuable. It's really just a unique and helpful training. I co-facilitate this training with my boss, but the real value in it is that we invite young people to attend, so that it's not just us talking. And Margot, you talked about this too, but we also compensate any of our young people for their participation. It's a very interactive training that models what we teach every step of the way as we go, and it allows young people to give input. And they get to provide feedback to the agencies who attend on different strategies for how to implement what it is that we all learn together once they leave. So when participants leave the training, they actually have plans that they can take back to their agencies that were developed with young people. And then the young people actually have more buy-in in those programs because they help to create some of the strategies with them. The YDI utilizes the 40 developmental assets, which, if you're not familiar, these are assets that have been identified by the Search Institute as basic assets that are important to the developmental process of all of us as humans. There was also 50 years of research that was examined, which showed that there are early adult outcomes that will help pave the way for success in young adults. And those outcomes are being economically self-sufficient, having healthy family and social relationships, and contributing in some way to the community around us. Those were further broken down and show that there were outcomes that are important to the development of young people. And those outcomes were that young people are learning to be productive, they are connected to the people and the community around them, and that they know how to navigate, how to deal with conflict, failure, successes, celebrations, but also that they know how to be resourceful to meet their needs. So from all of those outcomes, the 5 supports and opportunities were born. This image here that you see, which is the heart and soul of the Youth Development Institute. And it asks the question, so if we know what the outcomes are, what do we as providers, as helpers, need to do to help get people there? That is really what the YDI teaches. So I'm gonna go into these really, really briefly, but the 5 supports and opportunities are what young people need right now in order to reach the benchmarks, those outcomes that I talked about. Safety is the very first one. So it's the very first building block. It's the foundation. If you can see from the image, it's the biggest piece of this cake here. And if we don't have safety, it's impossible to expect that relationships will happen. So each building block kind of builds on the one before it. Safety can mean different things to different people, but the way that we talk about it is having access to an emotionally, culturally, and physically safe environment. And so with each of these, it's examining as an agency, how are we providing safe spaces for young people? If they're not getting these things at home, how are we, because they're coming into our doors, right? How are we providing that for them? And then relationship building, having caring and consistent, healthy relationships between adults and peers. And so again, if this doesn't already exist for them, how do we model this and then also help them find it in their personal lives? The next step is youth participation. And this is really looking at ways to not just engage young people, but to get them excited about being involved in programs, being involved in their families, involved in the planning for their futures. And then looking internally at our agencies and how do we create that space for young people to be involved at all levels. The next one is community involvement. And we really want to teach leadership skills, right? Building self-esteem, growing confidence, and really supporting the next generation of leaders. The reality is all of the paid professionals are not going to be a young person's support forever, right? And so we want to get them connected to the community around them and really feel a sense of belonging to the community, not just that they're existing in it. The next step is skill building. And while it's a building block of its own, it's actually something that's happening throughout each of these stages. And it's a natural outcome if you're truly following the flow that the 5 supports and opportunities teach. So I know Margot was using the word meaningful, and that's something that I had written in, but I didn't want to seem repetitive, so I changed the word to intentional. And the YDI's focus is really about being intentional about making sure that youth experience all of these 5 supports and opportunities as much as possible, because we know it's going to lead them to being successful adults. They're also seeking these things out anyway. If you think about a young person, they crave safety, right? They want to feel safe. They want to have relationships with other people. They want to feel a sense of participation in something that's greater than themselves, right? And so it's our role to help provide these things for them, or they're going to seek them somewhere else. One of the examples that I give in the training is that a gang, right? A gang will provide each of these 5 things for someone who can't find them at home, at school, in a program, in their peer groups. And really, as providers, it's our job to give these things to them in a positive way, to experience the supports and opportunities instead. Next slide. So we are very blessed in Placer County to have a really good group of lived experience professionals, and I'm a little bit biased because I'm one of them. I introduced myself as a program manager, but I'm also a former foster youth. I've also accessed mental health services through multiple times in my life, and I even had the pleasure of being involved with probation at one point in my life. As I aged out of the system and became a mom, I had more involvement with Child Protective Services for myself and my children. So my knowledge of the system is both personal and professional, and touches on lots of different areas. But in Placer, we have parent and youth partners who are employed by Cal Voices, the Family Advocate Program, and then also Whole Person Learning's, sorry, I'm slipping on my words, Whole Person Learning's Youth Empowerment Support Program. We work with youth and families who are navigating any county service. This could be the wraparound program, which we're heavily involved in, children's mental health, child welfare, probation, or multiple systems, because as we know, some families touch on more than one system at a time. But we walk alongside them and share our own experiences of navigating systems to help them, number one, not feel like they're an outsider or like they're alone in what they're experiencing, but also to help them really get the most out of the system that they're connected to. We work really hard to kind of shift that view that their involvement is really a support to them, and it's not a consequence that's happening in their lives. Our advocates are also involved at every level of county leadership. We're involved at the youth and family level. We also attend and help in the planning of our system improvement planning. And we have some of these listed here, but it's not inclusive of everything for sure. But we're also at the table for our SMART policy meeting, which is with all of the different county department heads, the presiding judges, the education department. We meet every 2 weeks at 7:30 in the morning to talk about the challenges that all of our different disciplines are experiencing, but also to celebrate the successes together, which I think is something that we sometimes forget about. It's easier for us to talk about the things that are not going well, but we definitely make a point to talk about the things that are. Let's see. One thing that is important when working with individuals with lived experience is having an environment and a workforce that is open to feedback and open to listening to consumers. And I really want to applaud Placer for creating that safety and taking the time to build relationships, just like that YDI framework that we saw on the last slide, because that really helps all of us be able to do the work that we do most effectively. Another really great way Placer utilizes lived experience is by, like all of our staff have been on different interview panels for new staff. And as someone who has had several county workers in my life, it's empowering to know that that my experiences and also the experiences of others are being considered all the way down to the hiring practices. And I love that this statement is here, that we're in this together, because I know you all have heard it, that it really does take a village. But I really feel that it's evident in the level of inclusion of youth and families that I've seen during the time I've had the pleasure of working in Placer. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay and Michelle. That was a lot of really great information and how you're using youth engagement and youth voice. And Michelle, thank you for responding in the chat to the question about the cultural brokers. I appreciate that. So next, we're going to transition over to the team from Nevada. And we have Melissa Balderston, who is with the Nevada County Superintendent of Schools, along with the 5 lived experience experts, Stephen, Alex, Amara, Angel, and Sam. So I will turn it over to you, Melissa.
Okay, next slide. I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to zip through my part so we can give some youth voice at the end of our entire presentation. Nevada County was the first in the state to house under the umbrella of the County Office of Education, both the Foster Youth Services Program, Independent Living Program, and then later adding the THP Plus program. Having all these programs together greatly aids in leveraging funds, continuum of care, and developing trust between youth and case managers. We also have Indian education within our department, allowing us to provide tribal placed youth services in a cultural responsive way. Now, I don't say this to toot our horn. I mean, it's been great having this. I say this because we are seasoned enough to know that it matters. We first developed trusting relationships with youth under our FYSCP program and our Indian Ed program in pre-K through 12. Then we hold their hand into adulthood, and they trust us to do that in our ILP program because they've gotten to know us. And then again, in helping them become self-sufficient adults in our THP Plus housing program. Now, you can do this without having them co-house, but you really need to have, the point I want to make is you really need to have a really collaborative relationship with your community partners that serve the same population. And do those warm handoffs with them. These youth, it takes time to trust, and we need to make sure that we are all working together. If you're just trying to be an island upon your own and then just send referrals and tell kids where to go and young adults where to go, they're just going to fall off the radar, and you don't want that to happen. Next slide. So we have some really great things that we like to do here in Nevada County is we have first our youth ambassadors. Those are our youth that are under the age of 21 who are current or former foster youth. They're given small stipends for participation. They attend our Foster Youth Ed Summit. We've been doing this for over a decade. We bring a team of youth down to the Foster Youth Ed Summit. It's in April this year. We're bringing 7 youth this year. We buy them professional clothing for all 3 days. We feel that's really important. We learned that probably 8 years ago. I think we've been doing that portion of it. You know, if they feel the part, they come and they do the part and they feel included. So we pay them a stipend, and we discuss after what info they want to bring back to our county and what steps to affect change. Some pretty amazing things have come out of this trip. We have, in particular, I'll highlight our high school. We brought youth back, and we've done this more than once. They have met, they've identified some areas of change that need to happen at our big high school district, and they met with administrators and talked about what they thought needed changed, and they were listened to, and change happened. We have youth voice in our Foster Youth Executive Advisory Council. That is our, on that council is child welfare, probation, children's behavioral health, all the district foster youth liaisons, the courts, our judges, parents, a variety of people. Our colleges sit on that. And so it's important that we have youth voice. We give them a section at the very beginning. We really want to honor them being there. And so we have the built-in part of our agenda just for youth voice. And our advisory reps, they talk to the youth ahead of time, and they bring that information back to the Executive Advisory Council. So it's pretty valuable. We also have them participate in resource parent and CASA trainings. Social workers are there as well. We invite everybody, but you know, They're primarily for resource parents and CASAs, and where they share their lived experience to teach resource parents, foster parents, and CASAs how to become effective parents and CASAs to foster youth. It has been so valuable that we have upped it to a few times a year, and we always have quite a few people in attendance. And if you're going, we go to that foundational level when you're just starting the process of becoming a resource parent, so that they hear from the youth then before they have youth in their home. And so it's been pretty valuable in that, having that relationship, and the youth love it. We always run out of time. There's always lots to say and lots to learn. I learn something every time. And they assist in our planning and facilitating of our annual Raise Them Up event, which is geared towards current foster parents, former foster transitioning youth, adoptive families, kin care families, and prospective foster families, so they can come and see the system of support that wraps our families together and meet the 3 major licensing agencies, so that we can recruit more foster parents in our community. So our ambassadors are highly involved. Next slide. And then for our older former foster youth, we have our youth mentor program. So those are youth typically ages 21 to 29. Sometimes we'll bump them up a little bit earlier depending, and they are employed through the County Office of Ed. So they go through the same hiring process as the rest of us: fingerprinting, mandated reporter training. We put them through a ton of trainings so that they are employees through us. Looks great on their resume moving forward. They mentor and support our youth ambassadors in a variety of engagements that we have spoken about prior. So they're at everything that the ambassadors are at. They mentor youth at the ILP life skills classes and our teen talks and our other youth events that we have here at County Office of Ed monthly. I think someone is muted. Their youth voice on the interagency leadership team. Now that team is the superintendent, Nevada County superintendent, the directors, those that are the top of the tier in terms of leadership is our interagency leadership team. And this population, they've already gone through all the systems. So they have just such a different set of goggles of now being out into the adult world for a while and being able to turn around and have this view of what helped and what not. It's been pretty powerful, to say the least. At the last one before last, there was one that really stuck out at me, something that he said about pulling sports from our kids who have so much complex trauma and behaviors from that. And when we pull sports from them, like it happened to him when he was younger, that he lost that anchor to that school and he spiraled more. So we are learning so much from their insights and their knowledge about living through the systems. Now, we have our Shelter Dog podcast. I did not come up with that name. The youth were really adamant on that name because that's how they felt when they were going through the system. We are looking to change the name because it is a bit negative, but we did podcasts to do trainings to foster parents and educational staff, anybody who wants to listen to. We still have them and we want to get them up and running, but we are working on changing the name and working on that again. So podcasts were pretty cool to do, and we want to get them up and running. They kind of fell by the wayside after COVID, and we want to bring them back. So, and then foster parent recruitment activities such as radio interviews. These are the folks that get on to really promote our Raise Them Up, and also foster parent recruitment within the community. Next slide, please. So we've been doing this for about 20 years. It's called YPAT, our Youth and Placement Action Team. It is ran and facilitated by the youth. I get to cling my little clapper stick or one of my drums or one of my other musical things here because I am native to bring everyone back to the table, but I do not run this. Our youth run this. It's for a long time, it was facilitated in a World Cafe model. We have a youth MC, table host, other roles, and we would decide on 3 topics. We'd first build upon what's working for foster youth in Nevada County, and then identify 3 areas of issue that the youth want to address. And we bring everyone to the table, from our judges to child welfare to probation to the courts, and it's really a strategic meeting with the youth at the helm. Last year that we changed a little bit because we have been doing so much youth engagement in Nevada County. The youth said, you know what, let's just focus on one thing and let's pull all the school administrators in and discuss education as our sole issue so that they can put their input into the LCAP development. This year, the youth have decided that they want to tackle mental health. And the barriers to such in our county. And so we'll be bringing, and that covers school site as well. So we'll be bringing school admins already are signed up to come to that, as well as our community partners like Children's Behavioral Health and Child Welfare. So that is coming up this month, and we always glean a lot of information from that. So very seasoned program. Next slide. New to Nevada County, and this is pretty exciting. We have our Nevada County Youth Commission. We are the first rural county and the 8th in California to create a local youth commission. The Youth Commission is a group of volunteer youth ages 14 to 19 that either reside in Nevada County and or are enrolled in Nevada County school system. Its mission statement is to identify, connect, and advocate for issues facing Nevada County youth. The purpose of the commission is to serve as a bridge between the youth and the Board of Supervisors while advocating for Nevada County youth and providing recommendations to the Board of Supervisors to facilitate positive change. So there's a link in here if you would like to know more about that, but this is our very first youth commission, and they have hit the ground running. It's pretty representative of our different regions in Nevada County, clear up to Truckee. We have tribal youth on there. We have former foster youth on there. We have special ed students. We really didn't want to just get the students that are straight A's and they're the go-get. We want to get the kids that have a unique voice so that we can capture the needs of all youth in Nevada County. So this has been something really wonderful that we've been able to start doing. And that gorgeous little girl to the left in the dress, that is my daughter. She is Susanville Indian Rancheria Maidu and a former foster youth. So super proud of her. Had to give a plug there. Move on to the next slide. I wanted to put this slide in because it's this picture in the background, that was 3 of our foster youth that we took on a college tour up to Humboldt. An essential part of prevention services was providing opportunities that help youth expand their horizons and dream bigger than they ever have allowed themselves to do. Yes, we got them on college campuses. We visited about 3 on this trip, but we also got them to the ocean. Those 3 youth have never seen the ocean before until that moment. That is the moment that their world expanded greatly. It is so important to provide those opportunities for youth to get out of the normal and see something different. And that makes more of an effect than some of the other stuff that we're doing. It's really powerful. Next slide, please. We have a great Padlet here in Nevada County for ILP, THP Plus, and FYACP. So if you want to click on that, we do a lot of trauma-informed practice presentations as well. So you're welcome to steal whatever you want from our Padlet. We are here to share. And I believe that is it for us until our youth get to talk. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Melissa. So many great things that you guys are doing. We really appreciate hearing from you. So yes, we are going to hear from the youth in a bit. I'm going to turn it over briefly to James Manning from the County of Santa Clara Probation Department to talk about the Youth Advisory Council. He's also joined by Stephanie Shinsato, I'm sorry. And I know their presentation is going to be brief because they are going to be doing their own breakout. So if you want more information about what they're doing, you can go hear more from them. All right, James, I'll turn it over to you.
Glad to be here from Santa Clara County Probation Department. We are going to be brief. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to Stephanie Shinsato from Fresh Lifelines for Youth. She's our community partner that we collaborate with. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Shinsato. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I have worked with FLY for about 4 years now. Here at FLY, we do have a little bit of like a mission, and that's just basically to partner with youth to unlock their potential and advance justice all over California. The Youth Advisory Council is a collaborative effort, and this is going to be just short and sweet because we do have a video. The Youth Advisory Council is a collaborative effort between Santa Clara County Probation Department and FLY. And we produce positive system change through the inclusion of youth voice. Our YAC provides youth who formerly participated in juvenile justice services with a unique opportunity to provide input on current system processes and policies. Additionally, it does allow youth the opportunity to use their stories and experiences to not only inspire hope, but encourage change in the lives of youth who are currently involved in the juvenile justice system. And, YC is here to just bring their lived experiences because they each have one. They each have their own lived experiences. The council consists of about right now 8 to 10 youth, give or take, who have prior involvement in the juvenile justice system. Candidates that would like to join YAC do have to meet a little bit of criteria, and that's just being 17 to 25, being involved in the justice system formerly, and then just not anymore, no longer on probation. They have to have successfully completed. Council members work collaboratively with the probation department and a few other system partners to inform and enhance the current justice system and the way they do things. And they do that by, bringing their lived experiences and voicing them. In addition to all of that, they also gain valuable experiences in giving back to the community. Council members receive a variety of services and supports, including professional and leadership development skills, personal empowerment, participation in social events, and we do pay them monthly stipends. So we do compensate them $25 an hour for their time. And yeah, they really just have this great opportunity to kind of get involved with their community and build, a better justice system for these other young people. With that, we also host like a monthly orientation that the Youth Advisory Council has put together themselves. And that's just to inform families and young people who are new to probation on what is expected of them, what helped them complete it. And it really has proven to help, just given with the feedback that we have been getting from the families that attend these orientations. But with that, I do have a video that we are going to play so that you can get a better idea of what the work that we do.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I think, Stephanie, if it's okay with you, I'm going to play the video at the end so we can give our young adults an opportunity to chime in really quickly and make sure we give them enough time.
Okay.
I to be good on time. So we'll come back to that and play it at the very end of our time.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, so we are now going to go to our lived experience experts from Nevada County. And so we're going to start by asking some questions, and hopefully if you all have questions for them, you can put those in the chat and we will incorporate that. But so we kind of already talked about, best strategies to engage youth in these processes, and we kind of wanted to hear from them what we should not do to engage foster youth or youth in general. So is there somebody that wants to go ahead and take that first question?
Sure, I'll jump in on that. I'm Stephen Thompson. I work at Nevada County Superintendent of Schools as foster youth services education liaison. So I work with the foster kids in the county doing tutoring and case management. And it's a unique position because I am also a former foster youth, so I can kind of engage them on a level of understanding. What was the question again? I just lost it.
The question.
It was what not to do.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, coming from that lens, I would say really, a lot of kids feel disenfranchised. And I think that really focusing on not calling them out in like peer groups and things like that is a big thing. If they're already feeling sort of ostracized from their peer group and from society, just kind of keeping that in mind. I know, like, especially this came up with myself and a couple others recently, like, if you do have, you're working with a kid, it could be probation, could be foster care, something like that. And you see them outside of the lens of your professional work, not like outing them and just saying like, hey, I remember you're that foster kid, or you're that kid on probation, And I think it's fine if the student is comfortable with that, then they can come to you, but I would probably steer away from that. I know that was a big topic for us last last couple weeks. There's my
Yeah.
answer to that one.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you have somebody in particular that wants to answer this question as well?
I see Amara, Sam, and Angel. Am I missing any of our other youth that made it on today? Speak up now. Go ahead and
That should be all of them that
okay.
made it.
Sam, do you have insight into this? Because I see you on my screen.
Yeah, I would say I'm inclined to agree with Stephen on like, yeah, don't just kind of like randomly go up to youth outside of a professional environment and be like, hey, you know, I recognize you from this, you know, like they come to you first, you don't speak to them. And then like what not to do, let's see. Just like not patronizing foster youth. I feel like, you know, we've lived through this experience and we've had these issues, but that doesn't mean that we are like not normal people. Like we're people just the same as everybody else. We don't have to be, I mean, yes, we do need like, you know, a lot of different like treatment and stuff, but we're still, you know, people capable of, you know, doing great things and, you know, just all sorts of stuff. And I feel like oftentimes like I get patronized a lot for being foster youth, and it's like it's one thing to like have benefits and stuff for like going to college and like financial benefits and all that, but just like people being like, oh, like are you okay, like blah blah blah, do you want to talk about it, like it's kind of like too much sometimes.
Amara or Angel, would you like to add one more thing before we move on to the next question? Feel free to pass if you want to as well.
Hi, I'm Amara Sharp. I'm an ILP. I think it's really important to give foster youth time and like kind of let them like do what they're comfortable with. And so like, yeah, not forcing and not outing them, but like giving them time and allowing them to get comfortable so they like can do what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, that's great feedback. So I think, was there anybody else that wanted to respond before we go to the next question? And I know there's people asking about pinning the young adults talking. I don't know that I can figure that out on my phone, unfortunately. So if anybody else has that ability, please feel free to do that. So one of the next questions that I thought would be interesting to hear from you all is regarding different platforms that should be utilized when engaging youth directly. So whether that's having youth attending meetings in person or social media, or sort of what are the recommended ways that you all want that engagement to happen?
Here, I'll jump on that one as well. So I know there's something to be said about, you know, physical meetings, but oftentimes the reality is when we're restricted to the times wherein we can meet. So having a blend of, you know, availability on Zoom and physical meetings so that everyone's needs are met is probably pretty big. Utilizing social media outlets as well. I mean, because that's pretty big right now, especially for youth. So, you know, kind of finding ways to advertise the services that you're doing or meetings, what have you. And I mean, you could use physical flyers at schools and whatnot as well, but I think the easiest way to engage them as a whole would probably be mixing sort of social media and physical meetings.
Sam, Angel, and Mara, I also want you guys to point out, how did we get you guys on here today? Like, how did we point that out?
Yeah, so I would say the way that I got here was I was told by my wonderful ILP coordinators and reminded by Stephen this morning that we've got a meeting coming up. And, you know, I try to attend as many meetings as possible. So they're like, hey, we've got a meeting on this day. And I'm like, all right, I'll be there. And so, yeah, I just try to go to as many meetings as possible. But as for preference in like the way these meetings are, I generally prefer in person. That's just the way I am. But I also understand that many people, including foster youth especially, and those who have been through traumatic experience tend to not want to be in a room full of people in person. They prefer to be able to, be in the background in a Zoom meeting, which is understandable. That's just not the way I am, but I understand people who are that way. And I do think it kind of depends on the person overall, whether or not a Zoom meeting or in-person meeting is better. So I'd say Stephen's idea of like the hybrid is generally best. But I will say, if you are going to do like a hybrid sort of thing, you have to be able to like pay attention to the people on Zoom. Because like when I was going through school in 9th grade and we had like a hybrid thing, I couldn't go to school because just the way we had planned around it, I had been attending Zoom. But then eventually they made it hybrid. So like a lot of people were going in person, and then there's like 3 students who are on Zoom, and we just got ignored every time if we even got let into the room. So you have to make sure that if you're doing that hybrid, you have to be paying close attention to those on Zoom.
Angel, you turn your screen on. Do you want to chime in on social media or any other ways of connecting? Angel, you're going to need to unmute yourself. Do you know how to do that? There you are. Oh, now you're muted again. I'm sorry, you're muted. Can we unmute him on our end? I don't think so. I think we have to ask to unmute. While he figures that out, I do want to point out that we text our youth too, and we have a Facebook and Instagram page as well to notify them of things. But we have, for our mentors and ambassadors, we have group texts. Best way to get a hold of these kids instead of phone calls. They're shaking their head.
Did anybody in the any of the participants have any questions that they wanted to put in the chat to be able to ask our young adults? All right, I think we have time to do one more question. And so do you guys have any thoughts or feedback about additional services that we should think about when trying to engage youth that maybe we didn't already talk about?
Yeah, I would say transportation is important a lot of times. Like I know that I wouldn't be able to make any of these meetings if, like Stephen or somebody didn't drive me to them. So, just transportation in general is very important. Like I'm somebody who doesn't have a car and lives in the middle of nowhere, basically. So I have no way of getting to meetings if like my mom is working. So having a way of getting to the meeting is definitely very useful.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to add anything? Otherwise, there is a question in the chat that we can move on to. Okay, the question in the chat is, what has been the most helpful resource for you? Or most valuable resource for you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I could go. I figured out my audio. Had to do the settings. I'd say just ILP, like the independent living program, like all together is like just been like a really great resource for like everything, just like work and school and taxes. And yeah, it's just a really great resource.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to add to that one regarding resources?
Yeah, honestly, just more praise for ILP. Love it. It is one of the greatest programs I've ever been involved in. It's amazing, and it's the reason I'm at this meeting. It's the reason I attend the Executive Advisory Council and the interagency leadership team meetings. Like, it's incredible, and we learned life skills and all sorts of things. So I would say it's definitely the most valuable resource to me in that regard.
Great, thanks for sharing. Any other resources? All right, well, we are going to try to go back and watch the video from Santa Clara really quickly. I want to thank you all for joining us, our lived experts for being on the call today. Really appreciate your insight and your time, as well as all the other presenters that joined us. All right, we'll go back to that. Ayan, if you can get that to play. Awesome, thank you.
And purpose. The name of this orientation was created by 3 of our founding members who were tried in the adult court system. They chose this name because they wanted to send a message to youth that your past mistakes do not dictate who you can become.
I'm 18 years old, and right now I'm currently housed in Santa Clara Juvenile Hall. I'm also participating in the Youth Advisory Council, hoping to help youth like me or the old me. I grew up on the east side of San Jose with both of my parents. They worked late hours, so they weren't really around much. I remember watching other parents walk their kids to school. I felt alone. Once I started middle school, things continued to get worse. I was getting suspended and getting into fights. I didn't manage to graduate the 8th grade. That was a huge disappointment in my parents' eyes. After that, I just stopped trying altogether. I didn't care if I did good or not. I started robbing and stealing to support the habit I was loving.
And it's just the audio.
And getting caught and placed in juvenile hall. At first, I thought I was going to get another couple of months, but I ended up getting direct filed.
We may have to share it in the chat if we're not able to get the video to actually play. Apologies, I know we could hear it, but there wasn't the actual video showing. So Ayan, if you could pop that in the chat when you have a moment, and we'll go ahead and wrap up, and hopefully people will be able to watch that on their own time.
Youth, there are questions in the chat. If you're able to pull up the chat and chime in to some of these questions just by typing in the answers for some of these folks, that would be helpful as well.
Oh, here I can answer the question. I'd say for like the substance abuse and stuff or usage, just like better educating, like what the effects of that stuff has like on your brain, and just better educating around and holding a non-judgmental space, probably very important. Yeah.
I like this one. What's the time you felt authentically engaged, and what contributed to this?
Piggybacking on the, very positive feedback with ILP, also the various meetings that are attended, such as the Foster Youth Education Summit, YPAT, various other meetings, like being able to have that voice and be able to talk and really feel understood is huge as well. Knowing that myself and some of the youth are able to be understood and be able to share their experiences is huge.
I know we are almost out of time, but there is one more question in the chat that just came in if anybody wants to respond to that.
I wish my parenting mentor was on this one for this last question. She would have a lot to say. I do want to point out transportation has been a really huge thing for our youth. We provide transportation to most every event. and the best times to host youth meetings and sessions, because we've been doing so many, and youth, again, chime in here, but after school.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Not during school hours. Or if during school hours, provide, an excused absence for that, as opposed to just being like, oh, you guess you missed that. Like, be like, hey, we had them in for this educational meeting that they were in. So, but yeah, definitely try to make it, not during school hours. And I mean, it depends on the school too, because like my school has some very abnormal hours. Like it starts later and it ends later. So it's sometimes hard to work around that. But then also like I'm usually able to leave early or come late anyways. But yeah, generally avoid scheduling meetings for the middle of school.
And we do advocate with their schools. So we do call the school, let them know what they're leaving for. Hopefully they can get credit for attending like the Ed Summit and things that they do.
Thank you. I know we're over in time, and I really appreciate all the questions that have come in. I think Melissa's information is in the first slide. I don't know, Melissa, if you want to put it in the chat, maybe people can reach out to you if they have specific questions for your young adults that can be addressed after this conference. So, all right. Well, thank you again for our presenters and for everybody attending. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you. Melissa, do you want to hang on for 1 second?